Welcome to the Hazardous Communication and Global Harmonization System presentation. My name is Kimberly Stanfield and I am your instructor. I am Pierce County Elections Specialist for the Auditor's Office. I am also their Safety Coordinator. This class is designed to help make you aware of our Hazard Communication Program and the new Global Harmonization System Standard, also known as GHS. With new container labels and safety data sheets, material data sheets, SDS, will now be called safety data sheets, SDS. We will talk about this more in the later slides. Some chemicals are more toxic than others. Just a bit of some chemicals entering your body could harm you. Others are much less toxic and would take great amounts entering your body to do harm. Chemicals can enter your body in several ways. Through skin absorption and eye contact, inhaling hazardous fumes, vapors, mist, or dust, ingestion, such as eating or drinking contaminated foods, penetration through a cut, puncture, or injection. There are two types of chemical hazards: physical hazards, which are chemicals that could cause you physical harm, or health and environmental hazards, that are chemicals that could cause you health or environmental harm. There are 16 classes of physical hazards: explosives, flammable gases and aerosols, oxidizing gases, gases under pressure, flammable liquids and solids, self-reacting substances and mixtures, self-heating substances and mixtures, pyrophoric liquids and solids, substances and mixtures which, in contact with water, emit flammable gases, oxidizing liquids and solids, organic peroxides, and corrosives to metal. There are 10 health and environmental hazards: acute toxicity, skin corrosion, skin irritation, eye effects, sensitization, germ cell mutagenicity, carcinogenicity, reproductive toxicity, target organs systematic toxicity, single exposure and repeated exposure, and aspiration toxicity. The kind of exposure you have to a chemical often determines how the chemical might affect your health. The dosage refers to the amount of the chemical you are exposed to. With some chemicals, it takes a very large amount to do serious harm, but with others, only a tiny amount can be very dangerous. Acute effects are short-term effects on the body that usually disappear if you're no longer exposed. Examples include skin irritation from touching a chemical or irritation of your nose and throat by inhaling fumes. Chronic effects are long-term effects that develop over a long period of exposure, even exposure in small amounts. Examples include damage to the liver or other organs, or developing cancer as a result of chemical exposure. Where can you find out about these types of hazards in your work area? As an employer, in Pierce County, we must provide you with a written hazard communication program, a list of hazardous materials, safety data sheets, SDS, and training. MSDS, material data sheets, will now be called SDS, safety data sheets. SDS is a globally recognized format, and the format has 16 sections. All SDS will follow this format. For example, you will always find first aid information in section number 4. Employers must ensure that each employee has a basic knowledge of how to find information on an SDS and how to properly make use of that information. Employers also must ensure the following: 1. A complete and accurate SDS are made available during each work shift to employees when they are on the work site. 2. Information is provided for each hazardous chemical. SDS contains more than warnings. It has instructions and information on ways to reduce the risk of chemical accidents and health problems from exposure. It may cover personal protective equipment, PPE, such as respirators or eye protection, hygiene practices, such as washing your hands after working with the chemical, engineering controls, such as ventilation, instructions for handling and storing the substance properly and safely, such as avoiding heat sources, cleanup of spills and leaks, how to put out fires, and dispose of the chemical properly. Now let's take a closer look at an SDS. Section 1 is Product Name and Company Identification. Here you will find the GHS product identifier, other means of identification, recommended use of the chemical and restrictions on its use, supplier's details such as the name, address, phone number, and you will also find an emergency phone number. Section 2 is hazard identification. Here you will find GHS classification of the substance or mixture and any national or regional information. You will also find a GHS element, and you may find other information on hazards that are not covered by the GHS. Section 3 is composition information on ingredients. Here you will find information on the chemical identity, common name and synonyms, a CAS number and other unique identifiers. You will also find information on mixture of chemicals that have their concentration and concentration ranges of all ingredients. Section 4 is first aid. Here you will find a description of necessary measures subdivided according to different routes of exposure such as inhalation, skin and eye contact, and ingestion. You will also find important symptoms and effects, acute and delayed, and indication of immediate medical attention and special treatment needed if necessary. Section 5 has information on firefighting measures, such as the suitable and unsuitable extinguishing media, specific hazards arising from the chemical, and specific PPE and precautions for firefighters. Section 6 is accidental release measures. Here it discusses personal precautions, PPE, and emergency procedures, environmental precautions, and methods and materials for containing and cleaning up. Section 7 is handling and storage. It discusses precautions for safe handling and conditions for safe storage. Section 8 is exposure controls and personal protection. Control parameters, for example, occupational exposure limits, values, and biological limit values. It also discusses appropriate engineering controls and individual protection measures such as personal protective equipment or PPE. Section 9 is physical and chemical properties. Here you will find information on appearance, odor threshold, pH, melting point and freezing point, initial boiling point and boiling range, flash point, evaporation range, flammability, upper and lower flammability and exposure limits, vapor pressure, vapor density, relative density, solubility, partition coefficient, autoignition temperature, decomposition temperature, and viscosity. Section 10 relates to stability and reactivity. Here you will find information on reactivity, chemical stability, possibility of hazardous reactions, conditions to avoid, incompatible materials, and hazardous decomposition products. Section 11 is toxicological information. Here you will find information on the likely routes of exposure, symptoms related to the physical, chemical, and toxicological characteristics, delayed and immediate effects, and also chronic effects and short-term, long-term exposure, and numerical measures of toxicity. Sections 12 through 15 are not enforced by OSHA as they consider them to be better handled by other agencies. Section 12 is ecological information. Here you will find information on ecotoxicity, persistent and biodegradability, bioaccumulative potential, mobility in the soil, and other adverse effects. Section 13 is disposal information. Here's a description of waste residues and information on their safe handling and methods of disposal, including the disposal of any contaminated packaging. Section 14 is transportation information. Here you will find information on the UN number, UN proper shipping name, transportation hazard class or classes, packing group if applicable, environmental hazards, transportation in bulk, and special precautions which a user needs to be aware of. Section 15 is regulatory information, safety, health, and environmental regulations specific for the product in question. Section 16 is other information, including information on preparation and revision of the SDS. This is a sample label that you will find on containers. Chemical labeling goes hand in hand with the new SDS format. Information found on the new GHS labels, such as this one, are product name and supplier information. Product identifier should match the product identifier used on the SDS. Name, address, and telephone number of the manufacturer or supplier of the substance or mixture should be provided. Precautionary statements include how to store the product, PPE, and first aid information. You will see a pictogram and below that a signal word with a hazard statement. Lastly, there is a supplemental information about the product. Here's another sample of a GHS label. Number 1 is the identification of the product name. Number 2, you see the signal word, danger or warning. The signal word is a word used to indicate the relative level of severity of hazard and alert the reader to a potential hazard on the label. The danger is for more severe hazard categories. Number 3 is a hazard statement. A hazard statement is a phrase assigned to a hazard class and category that describes the nature of the hazards of a hazardous product, including, when appropriate, the degree of the hazard. Number 4, you will see a precautionary statement. In the precautionary statement, we'll talk about prevention, response, disposal, and/or storage. Number 5, the supplier information and name. Number 6 is the pictograms. All GHS pictograms have a red border with a black graphics and white background. The red border should be wide enough to be clearly visible. All hazardous pictograms should be in the shape of a square set on a point, also known as a diamond. This is the health hazard pictogram. It is put on a chemical label when a substance presents the following health hazards. Carcinogen, may cause cancer. Respiratory sensitizer, may cause respiratory irritation. Reproductive toxicity, may damage fertility or the unborn child. Target organ toxicity, may cause damage to bodily organs. Mutagenicity, may cause genetic defects. Or aspiration toxicity, may be fatal if swallowed and it enters the airways. The flame pictogram appears on chemical labels for substances that are flammables, which are gases, aerosols, liquids, or solids that will burn or ignite under certain conditions. Self-reactives, heating alone without air, may cause fire or explosion. Pyrophorics, in small amounts, may ignite within 5 minutes after contact with air. Self-heating, which may catch fire only in large amounts and after long periods of time when exposed to air. Emitters of flammable gas, and organic peroxides, which, when heated, may cause fire or explosion, may be sensitive to impact or friction, and may react dangerously to other chemicals. The exclamation mark pictogram is used on chemical labels for substances that represent the following hazards. Irritants, irritates the skin or eyes. Skin sensitizer, which is an allergic response following skin contact. Acute toxicity, which may be fatal or cause organ damage from a single short-term exposure. Narcotic effects like drowsiness, lack of coordination, and dizziness, and respiratory tract irritation. This is the gas cylinder pictogram. When you see this pictogram on a chemical label, it means the substance is a compressed, liquefied, or dissolved gas under pressure at 29 pounds per square inch or more. This is the flame over circle pictogram. When you see this symbol on a chemical label, it means the substance is an oxidizer. Oxidizers may cause a fire by increasing the concentration of oxygen in the air. This is the corrosion pictogram. This pictogram on a chemical label means that a substance causes skin burns, eye damage, or destroys metal. This is a skull and crossbones pictogram. Substances with a hazard of acute toxicity will have this symbol on their chemical label. Acute toxicity means that exposure to a single dose of the chemical may be toxic or fatal if inhaled or swallowed, or if it comes in contact with the skin. This is the exploding bomb pictogram. It appears on chemical labels of substances that are explosives, which is a solid or liquid chemical capable of a chemical reaction that causes damage to the surroundings. Self-reactive, heating may cause fire or explosion without the need of air. Or organic peroxides, again, heating may cause fire or explosion. This is the pictogram for environment. If you see it, the hazard the chemical presents is aquatic toxicity or environmental hazard. In summary, we must always be aware of the products and chemicals we are working with and the hazards that those products and chemicals may have, and ways to protect ourselves from those chemicals. All of this information can be found in your safety data sheets and corresponding product labels. It is important for us to remember that information on the SDS and the labels will match, specifically the product name, supplier information, precautionary information, and the first aid. I want to thank you for your time and for watching this video. Have a good day.